All the things that you felt with the constraints were actually the scaffolding and the support that you needed. I looked back with a great deal of grief, really, that I was no longer a teacher. The education space is magical. It's very painful when you realise that you're on the wrong track.
This is the Education Business Podcast for all founders and business owners in the education sector. This podcast is for you if you have an education business or you're thinking about starting one. That could be tutoring, publishing, holiday clubs. It really doesn't matter. You're in business and you're also in education. But most of all, you're focused on improving outcomes for children in the way you know best, through your business. I'm Claire Riley, co-founder of educational resources website Classroom Secrets, and I'll be sharing how to make your education business bigger, better, and have more impact through my own experiences and also the conversations I have with other founders and business owners in education. The Education Business Podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets, helping you to support your children's learning. Sharon, welcome to the Education Business Podcast. You have made quite a name for yourself in tutoring, in a good way, obviously. And I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today to get some insights really from your journey. So we love a good story on the Education Business Podcast. Tell us the story of you being a teacher and then how you ended up in business as you are now.
Hiya, Claire. Thank you for that lovely introduction and inviting me to spend some time with you today. Much appreciated. So, me as a teacher, I'm going to invoke a phrase that I hope might be familiar with your listeners. Pit pony. I was one of the original pit ponies who was born to teach. It's all I ever wanted to do. All I ever wanted to do. I never fell into teaching. It was a decision I knew from a very, very early age. And I was an English teacher and head of year. I left teaching in 2012. So my experience of a teacher, it seems like a million years ago now. I was old school. I loved chalk and talk. I was the head of year who yomped up and down corridors, shouting at kids, asking them why they were out of the classroom. Get in, behave yourself, or I'll phone your mother. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But by 2012, I hemorrhaged out of teaching, hemorrhaged out of the classroom, and at the same time out of my marriage. It's a tale I have told on many occasions. And it's a period in my life in 2012 where I looked back with a great deal of grief, really, that I was no longer a teacher. Had the identity crisis that we go through. Who am I? What am I if I am not a teacher? But I knew I had a skill set. I knew I had a really, really good skill set. I could move a child up two sets in English within a matter of weeks because I was exam focused. I knew what the kids weren't getting, where it wasn't landing with them. And very early doors became a very popular tutor in my local area in Warrington. So much so that in order to scale my business and meet the demand, because there is a huge demand for tutors, even back then, I grouped children, put them into church halls, and by about 2016 had hit a block with expansion. I'd got multiple classes, I'd got multiple tutors working for me, but I knew I wanted more because I do consider myself an ambitious person, and I'd felt I'd massively underachieved in my role as a teacher. So my sister has a stagecoach franchise. She, brilliant businesswoman, dance, music and drama. And I was watching what she was doing in her classes when I originally started what we call the original business at Connexus. And then I realised that the franchise model was an incredibly powerful way of scaling incredibly good practice, a very rewarding business, and a very lucrative business as well. So by 2017, I went on a quest to open my second business, which is that of a franchise operation and as a role of a franchisor. And by 2017, I'd started franchising, created a small head office team in Warrington, and just moved through my journey in obviously COVID. Cancelling GCSEs and SATs was never the greatest of things to happen when you're on the upward trajectory of your business journey. But Connexus Tuition became one of the first of 27 national tutoring providers during the COVID period. And now, as we're in 2025, I sit at the helm of a national franchise with a phenomenally good network. I've positioned myself very much in the world of tuition. Our organisation hosts a great conference. We give a great deal of value into the tutoring community. But that also sits alongside a real passion project of mine, which is the Facebook group, Life After Teaching. So that, in a succinct enough kind of nutshell, was how I came from a job I truly loved and created a life for me that I also love outside of the classroom.
What a compelling story. I was hooked listening. I can tell that you're an English teacher. You've still got the skills, still a great storyteller. And it threw up a number of questions for me, really. The first of which I'm going to throw at you, which is, do you feel like you have been a bit of a trailblazer in the tutoring space? So I know that there were group classes before 2017 and all of that. And I know that there were other tutoring franchises as well. But do you feel like you had to figure it out on your own, or during that period of time, were you involved in other tutoring communities where you were learning from others?
Thanks, Claire. A question is real food for thought. And I think what happened with me possibly happened with quite a few people who've been in the game as long as I have. I originally started in 2012 and franchised, as you say, in 2017. And for me, when I'm reflecting upon that period and the world of tuition and community and support, there's a marker in the sand, and it's COVID. Prior to 2020, I think the world operated in the real world. Bear with, not online. But in 2020, we locked down. Now, I'm going to talk about another area of my life as well, which is life after teaching. And I think if I refer to that, it might give you some insight into the world of community. In about 2018, 2019, I'd started to have this idea that I wanted to bring teachers together, possibly in coffee shops or networking meetups, who could talk about the struggles they were having in the classroom, and they could garner support in a room full of like-minded people. And in my head, that was taking place face to face. But when we locked down in 2020, I started to join Facebook groups for support in business, and particularly in the franchising world, because business owners were getting together online, asking for support, trying to figure out what to do next, because let's face it, the world in business had gone to hell in a handcart because businesses were expected to pivot, they were brought to a halt. And my world suddenly became online, and particularly social media. So prior to COVID, I was very much learning about business, garnering support, but on a local basis. So in answer to your question directly, I hadn't really stepped into the tuition world the way I am now prior to COVID. But when we did lock down and we had a huge amount of time on our hands, and we started Life After Teaching as an online support group for teachers, I then stepped into the world of adding value. So I'm going to take your listeners to an original video that was done in 2021, the Pit Pony video, I started producing videos on YouTube to help tutors pivot to going online. And in that time of national crisis, I put myself in a position where I was supporting and helping. And as such, my presence in the tutoring world started to develop. Because yes, I was an early adopter, but I hadn't had the opportunity to become involved in a community because it was the shift in COVID that gave me a greater opportunity and a space to reach far, far more people. And I think that's been a real marker in the sand. And since 2020, there has been a wealth of opportunities for tutors to come together and network, mainly online. But then obviously I decided I wanted to go back to the face-to-face world, which is why Connexus Tuition hosts a national tutoring conference every year, which is why I get involved in networking meetings and meetups, because I think we can have the best of both worlds. But community is everything. Being able to reach out and support in the world of business, particularly when you've left the classroom, because there's a huge mindset shift that needs to take place from the mentality of a teacher who's paid the same amount every month, who knows exactly what money's coming in, who's told what schemes of work to deliver, who's given a timetable. The minute you step outside of the classroom, all the things that you felt with the constraints, if you're not careful, were actually the scaffolding and the support that you needed. And entering into the world of business, feeling on your own, can be quite daunting and scary in many respects. And there is a world out there of community support within the business world. We've got a great foothold in the franchising world, the British Franchise Association, great networks of fellow franchisors who support us. And I have always been a firm believer in collaboration, not competition. There is an abundance of opportunities out there. There's an abundance of wealth. There's an abundance of students. And if you step into the world of support with that genuine and authentic belief, then go for it. Go down rabbit holes, because I did spend a lot of time as a lone wolf, but I embraced the opportunities and the developments that came as a result of our world being locked down.
Do you teach children as part of your business offering? Have you considered using resources from Classroom Secrets? At Classroom Secrets, we're always adding new resources for a range of subjects, and we're keen to hear your suggestions for resources too. We know that you didn't go into business to work more hours than you did in the classroom. You went into business to give you freedom. Let us help with that. Visit classroomsecrets.co.uk to sign up. There was so much in that, it's hard to choose the next line of questioning because I want to ask you so many questions. So thank you for that. I wasn't following tutors really before COVID, but I agree there's a lot more in terms of community and events that you can attend now after COVID. And I have, been to some of those as well. And I think they've been really great places to meet people and share best practice. Thank you for your insights on becoming a national business from being a local business, because my perspective is that I've always been a national business, even as a startup, because it's been online. And so it's really nice to hear that perspective of there are stepping stones, especially when you tutor in person. But just a shout out to you, really, you talked about COVID, and I think we can look at challenge in two ways, can't we? We can embrace it or we can run from it. And you chose to embrace it on a number of levels. One, with the social media and putting yourself out there and helping teachers have that conversation. But also with the national tutoring program that you mentioned before. When you were talking about that, it reminded me of Classroom Secrets going for a contract to work with the BBC and also becoming one of the listed providers with the DFE. It was kind of one of those situations where you go, oh gosh, this is really, really hard, but let's lean into it, because if we don't lean into it, you don't ask, you don't get, basically. And, I'm assuming that it was probably a similar mindset, like, this is hard, but here's an opportunity. It might be difficult, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. And the last thing I wanted to pick up on what you were saying, which I think is really interesting, I've never heard it in this way before, and I'll definitely think on it, is that when a teacher's in the classroom and they have certain things that maybe they're unhappy with, that is the scaffolding that they needed to be able to deliver what it is that they're delivering. And I've never thought of it that way, and I think it's so interesting. So thank you for that perspective, because I'm going to think on that more. And I guess this is why, as well, it's really helpful if you do need that. Going into a franchise is going to give you all that scaffolding that you need as well. How important do you think your ambition has been to you throughout this journey? Do you think it has had a really important role in getting you to where you are today? Do people need ambition?
It's interesting to talk about ambition because for me, it can mean many things, and ambition doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with national success, multiple franchises, large businesses on a large scale. People can be ambitious about creating a great family home and ambitious by creating a work-life balance. Ambition for many people is achieving what they have set out to accomplish. Now, for me, ambition wasn't a case of getting absolutely clear on what I wanted and having a vision for achievements and goals. Ambition for me was about what I didn't want. And that was my starting point. And I've talked about this previously in other forums. I was very clear on what my life had become when I started my business. And I was laser focused on righting the wrongs that had happened to me and my life choices when I'd been a teacher. I hadn't achieved the higher echelons of headship or senior leadership teams or anything like that. And when I came out of teaching, there was a sense of underachievement. So I almost wanted to flip what I'd not achieved and create a sense of achievements for myself. And that made me ambitious because it was about, in my head, righting the wrongs and the missed opportunities. Because I'd always done well at school. I'd come from a very, very loving home, parents who were incredibly proud of me. But I'd not got to where I wanted to be or what it felt like. So I made some key decisions that life outside of the classroom through business was going to create for me and my children a life that I wanted. And very, very quickly, if you are good in the world of education, if you are charismatic or engaging as a tutor, I still stand by this statement. You will have absolutely no problems with filling the hours in a day that you're available to tutor. Standard. But what happens in many respects is your initial entry into the world of tuition does provide you with some great opportunities for a lifestyle, to be more present with your family. It generates a lucrative income for you. But then you hit a block. And that's what happened with me. My achievements moved into ambition when I realised I wanted to scale. And I knew I had a couple of choices with my group tuition model. I could either expand from my Northwest based and spread out across the Northwest with managed classes and managed tuition centres, but I didn't. I leaned into the world of franchising because it ticked two boxes for me. It enabled me to scale a business and still maintain residual income, but it also provided opportunity. And I think one of my real ambitions in life has been to impact other people who've been in the same position as me. Because it's very painful when you realise that you're on the wrong track, when you are working 80-hour weeks with very little to show for it. You're working 80-hour weeks in the classroom and there are casualties within your own home with your mental health, with your social world. So I wanted to provide a great lifestyle for me and my children, but at the same time, through Life After Teaching, through the Connexus Tuition franchise model, I realised I could impact a great deal of people and children through the scalability. So, for example, if we've got a great franchisee who's now got a team of tutors working underneath them, they're impacting multiple amounts of children across the week. They're providing tuition in schools, virtual schools through the alternative provision route. The impact with me as ground zero has been huge. So it was that ambition as well, which I think is mirrored in Life After Teaching, is mirrored in conferences. It was about how can I right the wrongs that happened in my life and carry that forward for other people, because I think you don't just have to be ambitious about financial wealth. You can be ambitious in other areas. And when I left the classroom, I realised that what I built for myself with my life was not enough. So it came from almost like a scarcity point. I might not necessarily be clear on what I want and what it's going to look like, but I sure as hell know it doesn't look and feel like it did in 2012. And with that then comes your drive and your passion and your commitment. And it's tough. There's no two ways about it. I could be sat in my world in Warrington, a lovely house, classes that I'm doing 4 or 5 nights a week. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. So you're right. I was ambitious. But my starting point for my ambition was there's got to be more to life for me than this.
I feel like I should be bursting into song now. Is it Rent the Musical with the song There's Got to Be Something Better Than This? I remember singing it once in a show, but I can't remember which musical it's from. But great insights on ambition. And I agree, ambition is not necessarily a goal, is it? It's not a financial goal. It's not a size of business. It's more how you want to feel and how you want to live life. For me, it is very focused on how much I am working, how I am using my time, and what I'm able to provide for my family. And I feel like I've got more clear on that as time has gone on, and it's swayed in the other direction towards what I don't want. It's allowed me to reconnect with what it is that I'm ambitious for and what I'm going after. I'd love to talk to you about franchising. So I think some people see franchising in education business as like the golden star. And I say that because many people have talked to me about franchising. I need to understand how to franchise because it's a big thing in education business. It's obviously not something that I've ever done or will ever do because Classroom Secrets doesn't work in that way. And with Connexus, you have grown your franchise bigger than most education businesses will grow their franchise. So as a new franchisor, so many people want to get into it. They'll go through the process, they'll get a coach, they'll get all the manuals in place. I've had lots of conversations with people who are starting that process. It is a big deal. But what do you wish you would have known in that first year as a franchisor that could help somebody else who is stepping out into that world? Because we've got lots of businesses that can franchise. So it's not just tuition, is it? It's education, activity providers, holiday clubs, and all that kind of thing. What do you wish you'd have known that you could impart to other people in the same position?
That is a question that is brilliant. It was such an important question to give me a minute to reflect about if I could go back to 2017, what advice would I have given to myself? I think that's the best way I rephrased it, Claire. With me, when I embarked upon the world of franchising, like what you said, I did my research, I had a coach, a consultant, I went into it with a real sense of responsibility, because when you are starting out in your original founding business that you're going to franchise, you've made your mistakes, you've had your experience, you've worked on your mindset. And when you embark upon the world of franchising, for me, I felt I had to adopt the position of being an expert. I was an expert in setting up a tuition business, the original model, the group tuition, but I was so inexperienced in many respects in the new business of Connexus Tuition franchising. And I wish I'd have framed the first 2 years very, very differently. I thought I had to be the complete finished product and get everything right and not evolve in many respects, that this is how I was entering into the world of franchising. What I would give as a piece of advice to somebody who is starting out is see your first 12 to at least 18 months with your early adopters, with your original franchisees, as a test bed, as a trial for what's working, what's not working, and be really live in that first period, because you're finding out what works and what works best. Because it's a very, very different skill set than starting your own business, making your mistakes. It happens behind closed doors. You can adopt the swan-like position in many ways, but when you're a franchisor, you almost have to assume you've got all the answers, you're doing everything right, everything's working. I wish I'd been a little bit more forgiving of myself, because when you start off as a franchisor, you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to get something quite right, or something doesn't quite land, and you need to refine what you're doing. So the first piece of advice I would give is see the first 12 to 18 months really as your trial period of getting it right, and bring your early adopters on with you in that respect. So rather than position yourself in the world of franchising and say, okay, you're now my first 2, 3 franchisees, we're going to bring them into your journey with you. Use them collaboratively to work together to find out what's working right. And bring that team of franchisees around you with what could work better, even better if we did this. So rather than see yourself as the finished product, see your early doors as a franchisor as an opportunity to finesse what's going to be your business, because it really does evolve. Who I was as a franchisor in 2017 bears no resemblance to who I am as a franchisor in 2025. It's been a real journey. The people who worked with me originally at my head office had supported me in my founding business, and very quickly they became the shooting stars. And what I mean by that is they were people who helped me initially get the franchising business off the ground, but very quickly their skill set, I realised, was not what I needed to grow the business. So I brought in a team of people who had got experience in business. Sarah Dunwood, Chief Operations Officer. We talk about Connexus Tuition Franchising 2.0. That's when she came in. I got a different set of coaches. We became British Franchise accredited. I grew with my business, and I brought in people who were skilled in the world of franchising in that respect. So the first piece of advice I would give to a franchisor who's starting out is don't think you're going to get it right necessarily from the get-go, and see that first 12 months, 2 years as a test bed, and forgive yourself and bring those early adopters on with you as part of the journey of getting it right.
Sharon, that is excellent advice. The people that I have talked to about this process, it's always been the stress about the manual and making sure that it's got everything in it. And I always liken it to SOPs that we have in a company. Now, I don't know how similar they are. In my head, they're quite similar. But for me, an SOP is never a standard thing that we don't change. Like, I'm always going back and going, let's add this bit in. Oh, this happened, so I'm going to make sure this is now in the SOPs. And you're right, you need to get people to come along with you. And actually, that's what I did in the early days in Classroom Secrets. So it's a very similar thing. You just, I suppose, have to have that different mindset. But I suppose with the franchisor mindset, you are thinking, I have to have proved that I've created this business that works, that then I can pass on to you. And it's probably quite a vulnerable state to get yourself into, where you're accepting of. So I'm going to take you along with me on this journey. I want you to believe that I've created this business model that works, but also we're going to figure some things out along the way. And so I guess that means that your sort of early adopters in that space have to be more entrepreneurial, perhaps, than maybe ones further down the line. Would you say that's a fair analysis? And we can all have those wobbles, can't we, as well, when it comes to faith and resilience. And I have been there before. And you've just got to be able to keep picking yourself back up. And I guess that's where the network comes in, knowing people who are in business, but also as you grow your business, people of the same level. That's been really helpful for me as well, knowing that there are other people in the same boat as myself who do understand the challenges that business has, because it has a lot of challenges, doesn't it? Sharon, thank you so much for all the insights you have brought to all the potential founders and founders of education businesses. I know that they will find all of your insights really, really inspiring and helpful. In your mind, what have we not talked about that you think is important to talk about that's good for founders and potential founders to know in the education business space?
Thanks, Claire. I've loved every minute of this, actually. So, okay, to bring it to a close, what have we not talked about in the education space? We've not talked about the one thing that matters the most, in my opinion. Let's take a step back. This is a vocational world that we live in, and we've not talked about the one thing that matters the most, which lies at the heart of what we do. It's kids. The education space is magical because it is filled with people who are absolutely dedicated and passionate about what education brings to a young person. It's the key. It's the key that unlocks doors of opportunity. So no matter what's going on in the world of business, no matter what you're facing, your forecast sheets, your marketing strategy, your networking opportunities, do not ever deviate from the very thing that put you in the space you're in, which is young people. Young people and the powerful influence that we can have over them. And I talk about it in many ways. It's about monetizing, and I don't mean the word monetizing in a sordid or nasty sense. It's about monetizing an absolute joy. I still tutor 4 nights a week. Yes, I do. You can call me a CEO. You can call me a founder, a franchisor, whatever. But 4 nights of the week, no matter what's happening at head office, what's going on in my world, I get in my car with mark pens. I've got my whiteboards, and I am teaching and tutoring and empowering young people in a subject I am so passionate about, which is English language and English literature. So whenever we are discussing education, whenever we're talking about business, let's never, ever lose sight of the core purpose of what we're doing. We are giving kids the gift of education, And we will never, ever know the impact that we have on that young person when we switch them on, when the penny drops, when they have those light bulb moments. So in the world of education, my final note is never, ever forget the people who matter the most, the kids.
What a way to end the podcast. Sharon, thank you. Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets. To find more resources to grow your business, visit classroomsecrets.co.uk.